Dragon lady, you gon' hurt your back. Dragon.
Popping with the population. It's another episode of Do Rag with the Cape Road with your host, me, Dre. I appreciate everybody who's been watching.
Thank you for coming.
Liking and subscribing. If you're new here, make sure to watch. Well, you are watching. Like and subscribe and share with your friends. Hit that notification bell so that way you can be informed on when I drop content. I'm here as part of the Remove Men from Mics movement as a cis hetero man himself, because I've had enough. I know women for sure have had enough.
I got 2 steps away from the group. They said, "Where you going, brother? The struggle is this way." My bad, fam. That's on me. I thought we was gonna make that left.
With the likes of the Andrew Tates and the Fresh and Fits, even though I think they've been deplatformed of the world, and the Ben Shapiro's and all of these people, the Tim Walshes or whatever his name is, that get to just say any random nonsense and be platformed for everyone to hear and make a living off of it, be able to provide for themselves and their family, spewing nonsense. So, as a man, as a cis heterosexual man, as a person, as a not an ally. I don't like the term ally. I like comrade, because ally just means we cool until we not no more. Comrade is ride or die type. You know what I'm saying? So, with that being said, I have all of these microphones. I'm not throwing away, but I'm just keeping them around just in case, somebody ends up in some kind of position and they're like, yo, men gotta give up mics. There's ladies that have been talking about it. I'm all for it, ladies. I get it. Trust me.
Please believe me.
You hear some of the things that some people say, you wonder who raised them. And it don't even necessarily have to mean that they had their moms in their life or their aunts or lady cousins or grandmas or whatever. But just, how do you not see humanity in other people, whether that be women, whether that be trans people, whether that be gay people, whether that be people of other ethnicities? How do you operate being so bigoted? How? It's wild, because a lot of these people are treated like the second coming when they're talking.
Everybody, I know you were expecting something else, but as science will tell you, people were a lot shorter 2,000 years ago. So let's try to be adult about this. No snickering. And hey, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so if we can all be mature, give me the gum. We can all get through this a lot faster.
And to quote J. Edgar Hoover, we must prevent the rise of a messiah who could unify and electrify the militant black nationalist movement. I don't think he was talking about people like Lil Boosie.
I got a bone to pick.
With the proliferation of the internet, the way in which we get to communicate is effortlessly streamlined. It's streamlined here in the U.S. in such a way that stream may be toxic for a lot of people who partake. A lot of us take for granted how easy it is to keep in contact with people. I don't even know if most people nowadays know how to use a payphone, or if they even exist for that matter. With that being said, a lot of people should not have access to the internet. I said what I said. Or at the very least, treat them like the little sibling playing the game with an unplugged controller. That's the only concession I'm giving up. The reason is because what are you here to do?
Can't tell you, they'll kill me.
Kill you, motherfucker, I'll kill you.
The quote-unquote marketplace of ideas tends to sell brain rot at a discount.
I told him don't cut his dick off.
People like Lil Boosie are afforded the internet being able to express find community, and spread an ideology dangerous to all of society. This man, who openly admitted to having his son and nephews essayed by a sex worker to keep them from becoming homosexual, as if that's how that works.
I want to see him. What the hell was that?
Did he show you his knife?
Is able to be platformed and is not in prison. Even though I'm, again, not an advocate of prison, but like he shouldn't be around people though. He needs help. What's wrong with him? This man professing that him being a Southern Baptist has something to do with him not loving on his fellow man. No pun intended.
I just believe in traditional household. I'm a Southern Baptist. My grandfather was a preacher. He was taught different.
And with the way in which he professes his hatred, that's threatening to the safety and well-being of his daughter. To a point of even calling her sexuality something that can possibly contaminate her other siblings.
You gotta love people for who they are.
I do. I mean, I love people. I have gay people in my family. I just don't condone the issue. It's not coming. I'm raising a generation.
So when your daughter came out and told you she was gay,
It was nothing. I mean, she still can't bring her situation to our house. My daughter is grown.
well, why? She's wrong.
Because I don't want it to contaminate her others. It's a generation we raising. I don't want her to get to contaminate it to her other 6, 7 sisters who look up to her. I want them to bring me grandchildren the right way.
Yeah, Boosie crazy.
If I want grandchildren the right way, that's what I'm going to stand on. You know, if I don't want my other little girl to look at that and say, "What's that, Daddy?"
Contaminated.
To somebody she looks up to, it's not going to come around. My grandfather didn't let it. My daddy didn't let it. And I didn't let it. I just hope the one under me, when they take this throne, they don't let it. Because that's not what our family believe in. Like you say, we Southern Baptists.
He said that with his mouth. And he thought that with his brain. Hashtag remove mics from men. Good Lord. His bigotry is echoed unambiguously under the guise of his religious beliefs.
But life is
Yes,
life.
I am.
Life
I'm
is
a
life.
Southern Baptist. I
Everybody
would
is
say
different in life.
I'm a Southern Baptist, I would say.
At the end of the day,
Which he uses to shield him while spewing this rhetoric via the internet that some agree with and some just like watching a car crash.
You see Hoover Street here. Officials say it's one of the most dangerous streets in all of Los Angeles. And now,
Being religious doesn't make you righteous. It just makes you religious. Your theological and or spiritual beliefs or lack thereof doesn't unequivocally make you a good person. It just makes you a terrible person with the theological or spiritual regimen.
Religious and spiritual people, rituals do not make you righteous. Say it with me. Rituals do not make you righteous. Religion consists of rituals. I will wrap my head and cover my head. I will pray 5 times a day facing the east. I will tithe 10% of my income. I will abstain from eating red meat. All these little rituals that you do to show your submission and reverence to God. But that does not make you a good person. Praying, reading the Bible, even give to charity. None of that shit makes you a good person. And that's what, it's hard to be a good person, because to be a truly good person is society and social relationships are extremely dynamic and constantly changing. So you can't just settle on a list of things. I do this and I don't do that, therefore I'm good. Because to be a good person, you might have to make adjustments. Like I could say I'm a peaceful man. I don't do no violence. I'm a good man. But the time will come where, I got to strap up. I got to do violence in order to be good.
But with all that being said, the thing is, people forget that all press is good press. So he's still getting platformed. People are still paying to see him.
I told him don't cut his dick off.
So, hashtag remove mics from men. We gotta do better. This is insane. What is wrong with people? Everybody is entitled to their opinion, but everybody's opinion is also entitled to be interrogated and investigated. So you can't tell people that what you said is just gospel. We can question you, fam. If you choose not to respond, that's up to you. But the way that you think, if it is directly affecting other humans, we need to get to the bottom of how we can fix that.
It's the kind of song that makes a man love a man, a man love a man, a man love a man. Says.
Now, as I've said, all press is good press. That's unless you're saying something that the establishment deems can ruffle feathers. Like Fannie Lou Hamer, whose testimony to the U.S. Credentials Committee was something that the system wasn't really all on board for.
I got a bone to pick.
She was part of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party that went to the Democratic National Convention for the 1964 presidential election in Atlantic City, New Jersey. They wanted a seat as Mississippi representatives, which was unsuccessful, but an impactful bid by Fannie Lou Hamer herself. Fannie Lou Hamer gave her pivotal testimony to the committee and the U.S. as a whole. The president tried to do all he could to deter it from being seen and heard by all of America. He didn't want her to muddy his re-election bid, but his appeal to silence her didn't work. He was able to get the live airing of her testimony redirected to something unimportant he was doing. He was just rambling, but he didn't want the people that were not necessarily indifferent, but not of the know. And a lot of those people, especially during that time, which was 1964, which was basically a lot of us mothers ago, a lot of those people were indifferent or unaware because they were in their white caste bubble. They didn't know. You don't know what you don't know. So if you have this woman, Fannie Lou Hamer, giving her testimony about how she was assaulted just because she was trying to register people to vote, they might be like, wonder what that's about. Now, he was able to get the live airing of her testimony redirected to something unimportant he was doing, but news stations got word of what Fannie was saying and rebroadcasted it for the American public, which was the white public. That's what the president didn't want. I think it was Lyndon B. Johnson at the time. Honestly, all of them are the same, so president really kind of works as just the name. You don't really need to know which one because they all suck. To cite what she said from an article by PBS, if the Freedom Democratic Party is not seated now, I question America. Is this America? The land of the free and the home of the brave? Where we have to sleep with our telephones off the hooks because our lives be threatened daily? Because we want to live as decent human beings in America? Insight. Fannie Lou Hamer spoke of how she and her compatriots were beat by Mississippi police unmercifully for wanting to exercise the ability to vote. Her political actions, along with the overall movement, led to the white power structure accepting that Africans should be able to vote with the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
And a chief of police on the inside and began to tap them on the shoulders with billy clubs and order them to get out. And I said, well, this is Mississippi. So I got back on the bus, and as soon as I was seated, I saw them when they began to put the 5 people what was, off the bus, but they wasn't over 6 feet from the bus, began to put them in the highway patrolman's car. And I stepped off again because I was holding one of the ladies' irons, that they was arresting. And she said, get back on the bus, Miss Hamer. And then I heard somebody scream from the car that she was in and said, get that one there. And then a white man stepped out of a car and told me I was under arrest. And when he opened the door and I went to get in the car, he kicked me. And they carried me on down to the county jail where they had the other highway patrolman had carried the other 5. And they, when I walked in with the 2 white men that had carried me down, and they cursed me all the way down. They would ask me questions, and when I would try to answer, they would tell me to hush. And when I walked inside of the booking room, one of the policemen went over and jumped up on one of the Negroes' feet that was with us, and then they just began to, put us in cells. And I was put in a cell with Miss Yvesta Simpson, and after I was put in this cell, I could just hear some horrible screams and horrible sounds, of licks. And I saw one of the girls was 15 years old, was with us, when she passed my cell, and she was real bloody. And then they asked the little man that cleaned up the jail to go inside and mop up that blood. And then I heard some more screaming, and I heard some awful sounds. And I would hear somebody when they say, can't you say yes, sir, nigger? Can't you say yes, sir? And they would call her names that I wouldn't want to go on tape. And she said, yes, I can say yes, sir. So I said. And she said, I don't know you well enough. And I would hear when she would hit the floor again. And finally she began to pray. And she asked God to have mercy on these people because they didn't know what they was doing. And after a while they passed my cell door with this young woman, Miss Annelle Ponder. And one of her eyes looked like blood. And her hair was standing up on her head, and her clothes had been torn from the shoulder down to the waist. And then 3 white men came to my cell, and one of them was a state highway patrolman because he was wearing a little silver plate across his pocket that said John L. Bassinger. And he asked me where I was from, and I told him I was from Rouville. And he said, I'm going to check that. And he went out, and I guess he called Rouville. And they didn't like me in Rouville because I worked with voter registration there. And when he came back, he said, you damn right. They said, you're from Rouville, all right. And we gonna make you wish you was dead. And they led me out of that cell into another cell. And he gave a Negro prisoner a blackjack. And he ordered me to lay down on a bunk bed. And a Negro prisoner said, do you want me to beat her with this, sir? And he said, you're damn right, because if you don't, you know what I'll do for you. And I laid down on the bunk like he ordered me to do. And the first Negro beat me. He beat me until he was exhausted. And after he beat, the state highway patrolman ordered the second Negro to take the blackjack. And during the time he was beating, I began to work my feet because that was a horrible experience. And the state highway patrolman ordered the first Negro that had beat to sit on my feet while the second one beat. And I just began to scream where I couldn't control it. And then the white man got up and began to beat me in my head. I have a blood clot now in the artery to the left eye and a permanent kidney injury on the right side from that beating. These are the things that we go through in the state of Mississippi, just trying to be treated like a human being. But still, this is called a part of America.
I suppose it's a naive question, but is there no possibility of you making a civil complaint or criminal complaint or whatever it would amount to against these people for this beating?
The Justice Department brought a suit against these 5 law officials from Mississippi. And they had their trial in Oxford. And they had every evidence in the world, if it ever was going to be any people convicted. Because we had flew to Washington, D.C., and had the pictures made, and they have the pictures today of what happened to us in that jail. The bus driver, they even had the waitresses from Winona at the bus terminal that said we hadn't done anything. We hadn't done no demonstration. The Negroes that they forced to beat me, they came and they told the truth. They told how these white men had made them drink corn whiskey before they did beat us, because they figured, if they didn't have something in them, that they might not do it. They told all of that, and nothing have been done. Those same men, I guess, are still wearing their guns.
Because also understand that the idea that certain politicians gave African hostages basically the ability to have their freedom and vote, people already knew that they could do that. There was already African people liberating themselves from their enslavers. All that law was, all the Emancipation Proclamation was, all the Voting Rights Act was them telling white people that. People who operate in whiteness that. African people already knew that. You just have to remind them like, oh, these people are people too. Gives you something to think about, doesn't it? Now, civil rights are human rights. All the people in the movement were fighting for was for those that have found comfort in the status quo to come to terms with their barbarity. The actual issues we face as a society is not the responsibility of the victims to answer for. It is very telling when people want basic things like the ability to vote like everyone else, or an end to a violent ethnic cleansing, that you're met with resistance, because how dare you want to be a human and see humanity in others, right? So, how can Kamala Harris be comparable to Fannie Lou Hamer? Fannie Lou was fighting for her people's humanity to be recognized and was brutalized by the police for it. Kamala is a cop. A top cop. Her words, not mine.
I think that part of what happens is, there are those, especially in this race and as it is gearing up, people are going to say, oh, Kamala was po-po. Hi, everyone. This is Attorney General Kamala Harris. As California's top cop. Now, I stand before you as the top cop of the top cop of the biggest state in the country. No offense.
And also understand she was a prosecutor for her whole legal career. She was always working with the state.
By way of background, you've heard a little bit, but I think it's important to understand that because it puts in context a lot of the work that I've done and the work that I hope to do as we go forward. So, yes, I am one of 2 daughters of parents who met when they were active in the civil rights movement as graduate students at the University of California, Berkeley in the 60s, the 1960s. So for my sister and me, that meant that we grew up pretty much surrounded full-time by adults who spent their time marching and shouting about this thing called justice. So for me, I often tell this story, but growing up, the heroes of that movement in my mind and many minds were the architects of the civil rights movement. And they, of course, were the lawyers. So it was Charles Hamilton Houston and Constance Baker Motley and Thurgood Marshall, who were doing the very important work of taking the skill of this great profession of law and translating the passion in the streets to the courtrooms of our country, and doing the important work there of reminding folks who unfortunately needed to be reminded of that great promise that we articulated in 1776, which of course is that we are all and should be treated as equals. So I decided I wanted to be a lawyer at a very young age. I went on to Howard University, and then I...
Fannie Lou Hamer and Kamala are not on the same tier of no.
And I'll share with you, I was very excited about it, and I asked my family to gather around to share with them my decision, and so they all came around the living room and said, okay, Kamala, what have you decided you're going to do in your pursuit and fight for justice? And I said, well, I've decided I'm going to be a prosecutor. And you're all laughing because you probably have a sense of who my family is. And you can then therefore imagine that at best it was a curious decision. And in some ways, and with some, I did have to defend it like one would a thesis. But what I said then is what I absolutely maintain today after a career as a prosecutor. Law enforcement has such a profound and direct impact on the most vulnerable among us, and has as its responsibility and job to not only give those often voiceless people a voice in a system, not only give them safety, but also give them dignity. So I decided that's the work I wanted to do, and I went straight out of law school to what was then considered to be one of the best DA's offices in the country. And
it's inconceivable to put Fannie Lou Hamer, someone who was integral to the Freedom Summer movement, organizing to get more Africans registered to vote. A movement that was met with much violence by those that didn't see them as humans. The pushback came from everyone, from civilians to politicians and the KKK. And then those civilians and politicians were also part of the KKK. Oh, don't forget about the cops. They were too. Creating a moment in time prompting a weird theatrical movie being made called Mississippi Burning. Freedom Summer was the backdrop. It's a true story about the three civil rights workers, James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Sweriner. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name. Rest up, fam. Who were killed by the KKK and police, which is basically the same thing, KKK and police in Philadelphia, Mississippi. To compare that person to someone who claims to be the progressive prosecutor with programs like BOT, which stands for Back on Track, a program that her supporters claim was a success, but the statistics and reality of the situation show otherwise. To cite a Jacobin article about Kamala's BOT program, according to an internal work document from the DA's office, just 241 individuals completed the BOT program between 2007 and 2011. 308 individuals left without finishing. While these numbers raise some additional questions like how many total individuals were in the program at a given time, and while the 2010 to 2011 figure doesn't appear to add up, the figures do suggest the scale of the program. It was very small. Pause site. The issue, it seems for many, is how to filter information and understanding their environment for information. So it leaves people with the convoluted understanding of media literacy. Media literacy alone is just understanding how to cite sources and gauge tone. But understanding the information ecosystem can inform you on why certain information is readily available for you and why other sources take an effort to find. So sure, you can look at Fox News as right-wing nonsense, but why are they given space to be that? Things that make you go, right? Right? Maybe. Of course, you can argue the First Amendment codifies your ability to say what you would like to do here. But why are certain people or groups afforded different consequences? Nevertheless, to cite this article, again, over the same time period, which was 2007 to 2011, There were 563 felony cannabis convictions in San Francisco, according to data gathered from the DA's office. On January 1st, 2008, the city had 1,849 active felony drug cases, and by year's end, 14,500 felony drug arrests. Pause site again. Now again, remember, these are first-time alleged offenders that she had go through her program. Like, these weren't repeat offenders who got to go through her program. These were people who who were alleged to commit whatever crime, had to plead guilty, and then enter the program, and there was a bunch of prerequisites that if they did not follow, they got in trouble by going to prison. Okay, back to it. Resume site.
Our goals of public safety. And so, for example, in Back on Track, we require the offender to plead guilty. Why? Because he's guilty. Right? The guy was out there slinging drugs on the corner. And some people would like to suggest it's a victimless crime. I would tell you it's not. You were guilty. You were out there. And by the way, I don't feel sorry for you. And I am not going to forgive you for committing a crime. But I do know what you're capable of after you've been held accountable. So let's get on the path of
insight. To assume everyone's guilty until proven innocent seems a bit backwards, no? Again, to compare Kamala to Fannie Lou Hamer is disturbing. Just because they both spoke at the DNC, Fannie was speaking and looking for a seat to deconstruct the system. Kamala is a minion of the system. They are not the same in any stretch of the imagination. People were outside of the 2024 DNC in Chicago protesting the ethnic cleansing of the people of Palestine by the U.S.'s greatest ally with the help from the U.S.
Your house! 13 years old! Sama Abu Lid!
Say it again. Say it again. Mock them again. Mock the children again. Do it again. Do it again.
18 years old! 18 years old! Yusuf Hassan! 18 years old! Turn around and join the uncommitted delegates in the protest. The blood of these children is on your...
What Kamala's moment is more in line with is what happened at the DNC in 1968. That was also in Chicago. People were protesting another bloody conflict that liquidated the fourth most American soldiers, which was 58,209, to be exact, when it was all said and done. And that was the Vietnam War. Which that doesn't include all the innocent Vietnamese people, plus the residual civilian deaths from the U.S. using the chemical Agent Orange.
Turn to a clip of Bobby Seale speaking in Chicago in 1968, outside the Democratic convention during the protests.
We go forth as human beings to remove these pigs, these hogs in the power structure, murdering and brutalizing people not only here in the confines of racist, decadent America, but murdering and brutalizing and oppressing people all out the world. That when we go forth to deal with them, that they're going to always send out their racist, scary, rotten pigs to occupy the people, to occupy the community, such as the way they have this park here occupied. Now, in just a second, there's a lesson that Minister of Defense Huey P. Newton teaches, that whenever the people disagree with the political decisions that's been made upon their heads, that whenever the people disagree with those political decisions, the racist power structure sends in guns and force to see that the people accept those political decisions. But we are here as revolutionaries to let them know that we refuse to accept those political decisions that maintain the oppression of our black people and other people in the world.
To cite a History Channel article about Agent Orange, Fred A. Wilcox, the author of Scorched Earth, Legacies of Chemical Warfare in Vietnam, told the Vietnamese news source VN Express International, the U.S. government refuses to compensate Vietnamese victims of chemical warfare because to do so would mean admitting that the U.S. committed war crimes in Vietnam. This would open the door to lawsuits that would cost the government billions of dollars. Insight. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Huh? So, that is probably why they won't admit what their funding in occupied Palestine and the West Bank, along with other places, have led to war crimes. The more you know. Certain microphones aren't treated the same. The 2024 DNC denied a request for a Palestinian American from the uncommitted movement to speak. But they had an Israeli-American couple whose son was taken as a POW on October 7th. They let them speak.
There's been a lot of talk about unity this week, so why won't y'all allow a Palestinian speaker to address the convention? And by simply saying that Trump would be worse for Arab Americans, is that not the campaign taking their votes for granted?
No, we're absolutely not taking their votes for granted. I think as it relates to uncommitted delegates at this convention, we're proud and glad that they are here. We've worked to engage them throughout the convention. We're proud of the fact that we held panel conversations with members of the uncommitted movement. We're proud that the Vice President herself engaged with leadership in the uncommitted movement in Michigan a couple of weeks ago. That's why the campaign has continued to engage with leadership of the uncommitted movement throughout this convention. And I think what they will see, what folks who continue to demonstrate and protest will see, is a Vice President, what has already been clear, and what they'll continue to see for the rest of this campaign, is a Vice President who is committed to ending the violence, ending the conflict, making sure that we resolve this conflict with a permanent ceasefire that allows Israel to fully secure itself, that fully continues and makes sure that we have full humanitarian aid, but also make sure that Gazans are able to peacefully live and prosper in Gaza. That's what she's going to relentlessly fight for as President of the United States, and it does stand in stark contrast to our opponent, whose only North Star is what benefits him, does not care about national security, does not care about global security, is only interested in his own personal self-interest. And so when you're looking for somebody who's going to serve as commander-in-chief, when you're looking at temperament, judgment, ability to handle complex global situations, there's only one candidate in this race who fits the bill, and that's the Vice President. All right. With that, I think we will wrap. But thank you all.
So you're rating sadness and like lots. Do you see how all of this is just the same story and song over and over and over again? You have a power structure that is oppressing people. You get the oppressed people to also oppress people. Then the oppressed people, then those oppressed people are trying to fight for some kind of dignity, and then they're told that they can't because they're not the right kind of oppressed people. Nasty work.
Yes, sir! This nigga spitting. Damn, nigga!
Now, during the protests outside of the Chicago DNC in 1968 against the military coup funded by the West, using people from American Vietnam as meat for the meat grinder, or some call it the Vietnam War for short, 8 people were arrested and charged with conspiracy, crossing state lines to incite a riot.
For more context about that Chicago's 8 trial, that crossing state lines to incite a riot charge was given to Bobby Seale because he was only at the rally one day. He had came in to speak and then he immediately left.
And whatever else one could be charged with if you're anti-colonialism. Those people were Rennie Davis, David Dillinger, John Fornes, Tom Hayden, Abby Hoffman, Jerry Rubin, Lee Weiner, and Bobby Seale. The case was a spectacle, and the Chicago 8 became the Chicago 7 after Bobby Seale was tried separately from them. The Black Panther co-founder was bound and gagged for several appearances at court because he wanted to exercise his Sixth Amendment privilege to represent himself.
I was walking back to my defense table, and he says, what did he say? Looking at the clerk, trying to figure out. And I said, you're a racist, a fascist, and a bigot if you're going to sit up here and deny me my Sixth Amendment right to defend myself. You got George Washington and John Jefferson up there in those pictures behind you. They were both slave owners, so you're acting in the same manner, etc. I mean, I got another colloquialist dealing with Dred Scott on, those issues that Gerald Lefcourt and these guys had given me this information behind the scenes. Because when I would come in the courtroom, they would hand me papers, hand me all the news clippings, what happened within the day. I mean, so in my attempt to defend myself, so it went on for 6 weeks with this judge, believing that I'm supposed to accept Bill Kunstler. It wasn't that Bill Kunstler was a bad lawyer. Bill Kunstler was a lawyer for the New York 21 and other Black Panther Party members, had been to legal conferences in Oakland, California, because we used to network our legal teams, with the Black Panther Party, other cases of Black Panther Party members. It was that here I'm in a confrontation that, wait a minute, who the hell does this judge think he is? I was stuck on, here's the rule, Sixth Amendment, boom, boom, boom. Therefore, if I say I want to defend myself, he's going to deny the right. Therefore, the whole hell I'm concerned, he's denying that. It's going to get appealed. But at points, I sit in the courtroom, said nothing, maybe 1 or 2 days. Somebody mentioned my name. I jump up and attempt to defend myself. I object. Sit that man down. No, I object. This man is talking about me, and I have a right to say this kind of stuff. Because next thing you know, we're in a confrontation. Send the jury out. Well, Dick Schultz, the prosecutor, gets up and lies one morning. We're getting into 6 weeks of this, and says that I told the Black Panthers in the audience before the judge came in, before court was convened, to threaten. I says, you're a liar. You're a dirty, rotten liar. I mean, this is in front of the judge now. I'm telling Schultz that. Boom, 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 boom. I says, we have a right to defend ourselves if the marshals jump on us. And I walked up spitting, angrily shooting off the mouth in Schultz's face, and I'll defend myself. If you strike me out, I wanted to say I'll kick you. My point is,
or some other similar word.
At another point, all these marshals attacked me. Judge Julius Hoffman had this big guy. Some of these guys were moonlighting from the Cook County Jail, and he hated all of us. He's a big black cartoon caricature of something like the big black bald-headed Russian. He had a very light-complected African American guy. I nicknamed him Goliath, And this guy comes around, busts me in the chest. When I'm standing up, first he knocks Dave Dillinger on the top of the table, busts me in the chest, slamming me in my chair. With the chairs in the courtroom had wheels on them, I go sailing back. I'm sailing back. All these other marshals are coming in, and boom, next thing I know, I'm cussing the judge out again about my Sixth Amendment rights. My arm is being almost broken. My other leg is being drugged by another marshal. They're trying to pick me up off the ground. I'm still cussing this judge out. I'm in pain. Finally, this judge make orders to them take me in the back. They put me in a chair, a metal folding chair, the very first day of being gagged, metal handcuffs and leg cuffs to the metal structure of the metal chair, and some tape over my mouth, and pick me up, sitting in the chair, 2 or 3 marshals on each side, bring me in the courtroom once it's convened, sit me down, and, of course, Bill Kunstler and a wine glass, everybody. This is medieval torture. I don't see how you can do this. The jury comes in. A jury member's tears is running down her eyes. She can't stand this stuff.
But it makes an interesting political point, though.
It was not only a political point. This man was going to the extremes.
Yeah.
And then I was told to shake my head or something to
respond
as to whether or not I would not disrupt the courtroom anymore. And the next thing I know, I'm mumbling under the tape. I can talk. I want my constitutional right. This is what's happening. And then they picked me up, and then I remembered something, and a lot of my old readings of all my African-American history is a person who's pulling at their chains is acting in the manner of a free man. So clang, 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 the metal cuffs against the metal structure of the chair, clang, clang, clang. Well, this disrupts the courtroom. Send the jury out, boom, 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 boom. Everybody's in disarray. They take me out, etc. My point is the next day they have me in a wooden chair with padded straps, hospital straps.
Being anti-war, anti-genocide, and all the other antis, which fall under the anti-colonialism umbrella, bring the ire of the establishment. So the lack of humanity is on brand for those who want power. The fight to kibosh revolution is as American as the Dallas Cowboys being terrible. But to the Cowboys' defense, they were once a good team, but internally were a drug-fueled, horny, crime-ridden utopia. Oh, well, basically still America. As American as theft. Well, alleged theft by Brett Peen Pick Favre. The former Super Bowl champion with a team of possible crooks, maybe possibly for sure, might have, allegedly, stole several $1 million designated for the temporary assistance for needy families, or TANF for short, in Mississippi to make a volleyball court at the University of Southern Mississippi, which is not a family in need of assistance. Again, giving these people space to just get off whatever kind of nonsense. Now, during his congressional hearing last month about him allegedly, and again I say allegedly, defrauding the state and federal government for a new volleyball court, he let the panel know that he had Parkinson's disease.
To help my alma mater and benefit the community, Southern Miss introduced me to the nonprofit to see if they could help with the funding. I had no way of knowing that there was anything wrong with how the state funded the project, especially since it was publicly approved by many state agencies and multiple attorneys, including the Attorney General. Sadly, I also lost an investment in a company that I believed was developing a breakthrough concussion drug I thought would help others. And I'm sure you'll understand why it's too late for me, because I've recently been diagnosed with Parkinson's. This is also a cause dear to my heart. Recently, the doctor running the company pleaded guilty to taking TANF money for his own use. I believe that I got swept up in a civil lawsuit at the instigation of State Auditor Shad White, an ambitious public official who decided to tarnish my reputation to try to advance his own political career. Even after he applauded me for returning the funds and said there was no evidence that I knew.
Because now, as someone who had the honor of working with people with Parkinson's, never once did any of those people try to steal my wallet.
Who is that guy?
So I don't know what Brett was doing, telling people he got Parkinson's. Where's the money, fam, that you allegedly took because of those text messages where you were allegedly trying to figure out if it was legal for you to take the money? Allegedly. Some of the people on the committee that were asking him questions just seemed to kind of chalk it up to hijinks and talk to Favre about his playing career. They also had the nerve to ask what he thinks can be done to better protect welfare funds. The funds that he allegedly stole with a group of people. Allegedly. My eye's twitching right now. As of right now, Brett Favre is facing no criminal charges, but is required to pay back the interest on the money he received in this welfare defrauding plot. He was afforded a microphone to say nothing whilst keeping the materially poor, and the materially wealthy people unchecked. Because being materially, why does that sound weird out of my mouth? I don't know. But when you have monies, you can purchase influence. And influence is power. And power is for the weak.
Yes, sir! This nigga spitting. Damn, nigga!
And Brett Favre went back into a corner for allegedly taking monies, says, hey man, I got Parkinson's. Again, as somebody that has had the pleasure and honor of working with people who have Parkinson's, they never tried to get me in on an MLM scam. Never once did I meet anybody that was running numbers, and not one of them was about to hit me off with a fake credit card. So I don't know what Brett was doing with that information. Keep it to yourself. That question of class, how much money is too much money for someone? And a slew of others can make people think you're a socialist. As if caring about income inequality is solely an established political stance. And as if being called a socialist is an insult.
Facts.
Speaking of socialism, as we come to the end of all this,
I got a bone to pick.
The Uhuru movement, which is also known as the African People's Socialist Party, per their website, they are located in the U.S. in several places. Their main base is in St. Petersburg, Florida. To cite their platform on the African Socialist Party website, I'll give you the 14-point platform without the explanation of each point because you can go read it your goddamn self. 1, we want peace, dignity, and the right to build a prosperous life through our own labor and our own interests. Fair, right? 2, we want the rights to economic development and creative and productive employment which promote the needs and well-being of an entire people. All right. 3, we want to end all local, state, federal, and other taxation of black people by the U.S. government and any of its agencies. I'm on board with that because when you factor in if the current power structure were to actually do their due diligence and give people reparations, society as we know it would collapse. The amount of money at this point is innumerable. Because the thing about chattel slavery is that it kind of like never ended. It just went from plantation to peonage to prison. And then all other ways in which being African in America has extorted you of any kind of material comfort. So, yeah, still on board. Here we go. Number 4, we want the right to free speech and political association, a guarantee of the right to work for the betterment and emancipation of black people without fear of political imprisonment and loss of life, limb, and livelihood. Number 5, we want the right to international political and economic association with Africans and all other people anywhere on the face of the earth. Okay, I'm still not seeing any issue here. We want the immediate and unconditional release of all black people who are presently locked down in U.S. prisons. It's not seeing any issue there. Because again, this isn't saying that people who commit heinous crimes like any kind of SA stuff or unaliving people should be free to roam the planet without any repercussions for their actions. But it's saying that we should be looking to figure out how to actually reform those people rather than the whole thought that you go into prison a petty criminal and you come out a killer. Or you go in who was somebody that was already doing that and come out even worse if you ever come out. But actual care about mental health and keeping a safe society would mean actual care about mental health and wanting to keep a safe society rather than just being like, oh, you kind of breaking the codes, throw you in the trash can. And that doesn't necessarily mean that people that do certain things should be with general population just because they've atoned and we figured out the cause of their material issues and their psychological issues. Like, that situation of abolishment is complicated to me, I feel. And I would imagine with it, anybody who wants abolishment, because people are like, well, where are these people supposed to go? But it's like, if you peel back the layers to a lot of the issues that cause people to commit certain crimes, then you can figure out how to mitigate or even stop those altogether, which in turn would leave you with less people doing that or any people at all doing it. And the ones that have done it, you figure out how to better work with those people to then have them in a situation where they're good for wherever they're at, but it's not necessarily in a prison. But again, makes sense. We want complete amnesty for all African political prisoners and prisoners of war from U.S. prisons or their immediate release to any friendly country which will accept them and give them political asylum. All right? We want the immediate withdrawal of U.S. police from our oppressed and exploited communities. All right? Yeah. Because again, if you rework resources and put it into certain things and you actually do it with care, then you, again, mitigate to the point of almost eradicating certain issues, and then certain entities and certain organizations or whatnot won't need to be in existence, or at least the capacity will be within a different outlook. They won't be doing the same thing anymore because of the actual care for any said community. Number 9, we want an end to political and social oppression and economic exploitation of African women. Yeah. Perfect example of that is, let's say, everybody's favorite people, the Kardashians.
You don't really act. You don't sing. You don't dance. You don't have any, forgive me, any talent.
Who they basically like appropriated a almost cartoonish like African woman aesthetic and then sold it back to African women. And then once they did all that they had to do with it, then they removed butt implants. But that's a whole nother talk, man. Let me get back to this. We want the right to build an African People's Liberation Army. Get that? We want the U.S. and international European ruling class and states to pay Africa and African people for the centuries of genocide, oppression, and enslavement of our people. Again, realistically, with reparations, if that was really given to African people of the diaspora and African people in the continent, the social fabric, not even the social fabric, the economic fabric would shatter because it's innumerable at this point. I'm not saying that it shouldn't happen. I'm just saying that if you want it to happen in terms of actually still playing within this current system that we have, this system is not going to exist anymore. And so that's one of the largest pushbacks on reparations. Because there's other groups, like people of Jewish faith, some Japanese people got reparations, and indigenous people in certain instances got reparations or whatnot. But to give African people reparations, that would cause revolution. That act by itself. Number 12, we want an end to the vicious, self-serving U.S. and Western European political, economic, and military interference in the affairs of Africa and African people throughout the world. All right? We want an end, number 13, we want an end to U.S. colonial domination of African people within the U.S. All right? 14, we want the total liberation and unification of Africa under an all-African socialist government. All right. All of those seem to make sense. I didn't see anything that would make me go, we should probably remove the mic from those people. Insight. Now, the African People's Socialist Party was founded by Omali Yeshitela in 1972 in St. Petersburg, Florida. All right. Now, these people are currently under duress from the state.
Order. This is the FBI. We have a warrant.
They handcuffed me and my wife out here. They wanted me to sit on the curb while they were carrying this out. Something that I refused to do. They wanted my wife to sit on the curb out here, that she refused to do.
As I was coming out,
this big old drone met me.
The only revolutionary organization that's done something here on the ground practically for African people is the one that's come under attack. Institution that offers a community radio station, a newspaper, a commercial kitchen, an Aquaba Hall rental space, and community office for our organizers. That was the building that has come under attack.
Yeah, breach, what do you need? Need one. I don't know. I'll told Ben the money. All right. Thank you.
We will build a movement of white people that says hands off the Uhuru movement.
They see in the African People's Socialist Party a vanguard for the struggle for the liberation of our people. They see that because not just what we do here in the United States, but because we had the temerity to do like Garvey, to do like Malcolm X, and take the struggle of black people around the world.
Three that are currently going through this court case are the chairman, Omali Yeshitela, and two members from the Solidarity Front, Jesse Neville and Penny Hess. They are being harassed for allegedly being foreign agents working with Russians to infringe upon American values like freedom. The indictment was handed down in April of 2023. To cite an article from CBS, in his opening statement, Justice Department Attorney Mino Goldman said the group's members acted under Russian direction to stage protests in 2016, claiming black people have been victims of genocide in the U.S. and took other actions for the following 6 years that would benefit Russia, including opposition to U.S. policy in the Ukraine war. Insight. Yes, because secretive Russian oligarchs are truly invested in the West reckoning with all the past as well as ongoing atrocities African people face in the U.S. What? The argument of making a pariah of anyone who questions the intentions of the U.S. and NATO makes you a Putin apologist? That's wild. Considering, never mind. Speaking about the occupations and countless proxy conflicts the West is part of is a whole thing within and of itself. Now, to cite a FloridaPhoenix.com article, Hess, one of the Uhuru Three, 78, said on Wednesday that the case is an attack on free speech because nowhere in the indictment does it allege that the party has ever done anything like murder or fraud or theft or of anything like that. Yes, he spoke in Russia, speaking of Omali Yeshitela. She said about Yeshitela's participation in the conference as listed in the indictment. He also spoke in Spain. He has spoken all over Europe. He has spoken in many, many places in Africa, in Jamaica, just all over the world. Yeshitela spoke last at the press conference. He grew angry and at times emotional in questioning the rationale that somehow he had been influenced by the Russians. He said that what had informed his politics was living and enduring racism as a black man growing up in Florida in the pre-civil rights era. Insight. He was also a part of a SNCC movement in Florida as well. So he's somebody that's deeply embedded into the African liberation movement, civil rights movement, but somehow, because he's saying the part that we all know of, like, hey, reparations, genocide of African people from the past and to today, somehow that is Russian propaganda? What? The Uhuru 3 beat the foreign agent charges, but were found guilty of conspiracy, though. So basically, they were found not guilty of doing the thing they were accused of, but found guilty of possibly maybe thinking about it. It's like that propaganda sci-fi movie with Tom Cruise starring in it that was called The Minority Report. Of course.
Okay, Jad, what's coming? Double homicide, 1 male, 1 female. Killer's male, white, 40s. Set up a perimeter and tell them we're en route.
I'm placing you under arrest for the future murder of Sarah Marks.
Yes, it wasn't worth watching unless you want to see some futuristic propaganda that plays on very fixable issues and the indefinite class struggle we seem to be stuck with. And also, yes, the state is predatory when you aren't in agreement with it. See the Uhuru 3 that were found not guilty of being foreign agents, but found guilty of conspiracy. So you're telling me that they didn't do the thing, but then somehow they conspired to do the thing. They wanted to do the thing. They may have thought about doing the thing, but they didn't actually do the thing. How does that make any sense? Why am I doing all of these hand motions? This is what we're left with. These people aren't afforded microphones because they said, hey, stop colonizing and also reparations. We kicking in your door. Feds. 30. We're going to have 30 FBI witnesses. Most of them, pretty much all of them, don't even know what your movement is about. And we're going to say absolutely nothing on the stand.
A couple of highlights, and I don't have time to go through all of it, but I just wanted to pick out a few key moments, and there were so many in this trial. Under cross-examination, multiple FBI agents were forced to admit that they had zero evidence that the chairman or the Uhuru 3 had ever once agreed to do anything under the direction or control of the Russian government or of a Russian person or of anyone. They had no evidence of that. And they said that. Not our witness. The FBI agents admitted that under cross-examination. And then each time that would happen, the prosecutor would come up for a redirect and desperately try to undo what had just.
But because you guys are talking about reparations and you don't want proxy wars and you don't want colonialism, you shut up. But Lil Boosie gets to sit on a stage and say that his gay daughter can't bring her girlfriend around, or in his words, situation around, because he don't want it to contaminate none of her siblings. And he's also still able to have children around him after admitting that he had a sex worker service his children and nephew. That's cool. Platform Boosie. Songs everywhere. African Socialist Party, bad. Boosie, turn it up.
I told him don't cut his dick off.
It makes no sense. Now, the status quo is what we are all, in more ways than one, adherent to. For us to break away and be better as a people takes not removing microphones away from certain voices. Those voices can possibly create a space where conversations turn into action for the greater good. Right now, the Uhuru 3 sentencing is on November 25th.
The sentencing date has actually been changed to December 16th, 2024.
I'll leave the link to what you can do to support in the video description. But again, some voices do need to be silenced indefinitely, like Boosie. Some actual possible Russian agents of misinformation needs to be silenced, or at the very least isolated for only their audience, and those people are the right-wing grifter consortium. Those people are, I don't really know or care to retain any of their names, but for you, I was able to pick up some of their names. Their names are Tim Pool, Dave Rubin, and Benny Johnson, along with several others. What is alleged is that they were given money by Russian oligarchs through a pseudonym entity named Edward Gregorian, who represents Tenet Media and Russia Today Media, to promote treasonous-like propaganda. To cite a Hollywood Reporter article, when approached to work with Tenet Media, the indictment states that influencers were told that the project was funded by a man named Edward Gregorian. However, the DOJ claims Gregorian was a fictional persona. While one influencer, whose courting by Tenet and RT is described in the legal filing, expressed some trepidation and skepticism around the funding, they still agreed to a contract that gave them a $400,000 monthly fee and a $100,000 signing bonus to produce 4 weekly videos. All 6 of the influencers who were involved in the alleged Russian plot issued statements denying their knowledge of who was funding their work and claimed they were victims of the Russian operation. The Red Scare has never ended. Sorry, insight. The Red Scare has never ended. I haven't really been able to find out what else is going on with the case. They are all claiming to have been duped into these possible offenses because, of course, they all still have their microphones, unfortunately. And Lil Boosie's only song that I know, like, which is, what is it, I-N-D, ain't that Boosie's song? E-D or I-N, why can't I spell independent? I-N-D-E-N-P, whatever. You know the damn word. The only Lil Boosie song that I know is actually sampled and used on a really cool Glorilla song. Because, again, of course,
I told him don't cut his dick off.
words can shape reality. Words can inspire the masses. Be mindful of what comes out of your mouth. And make sure to keep your do-rag cape rolled. All right, peace.